February 1945. In a bunker beneath Berlin, Luftwaffe intelligence officers sat around a table covered with production reports, casualty statistics, and reconnaissance photographs of American bomber formations. The numbers had been checked 3 times. They were accurate, and they were devastating. In 1944 alone, American factories had produced 96,270 military aircraft. That single year's output exceeded Germany's entire wartime production of approximately 94,677 aircraft from 1939 through 1945. The officer presenting the report paused, watching faces around the table process what this meant. Someone asked about Hermann Göring, the Reich Marshal who commanded the Luftwaffe. Would he see this report? The question was met with bitter silence. Everyone in that room remembered May 1940, when Göring had laughed at American production targets, calling them propaganda and fantasy. That laughter now seemed like mockery of a different kind. Mockery of Germany itself. The moment Göring had dismissed so casually occurred on May 16, 1940, as German armored columns raced through France toward Paris. Standing before the United States Congress that day, President Franklin Roosevelt declared his intention to build American aircraft production capacity to 50,000 planes per year. The claim seemed absurd even to many Americans. In 1939, the United States had produced only 3,611 military aircraft. The Army Air Corps possessed roughly 1,700 combat planes, many already obsolete. Roosevelt was demanding a 14-fold increase from a standing start. When administration officials were asked who could possibly deliver such a miracle, the answer kept coming back to one name: William S. Knudsen. A Danish immigrant who had risen to become president of General Motors, Knudsen walked away from a $300,000 annual salary to serve his adopted country for $1 per year. His mission was to apply automotive mass production principles to aircraft manufacturing, a task many engineers considered impossible. German intelligence monitored American industrial mobilization with interest but little concern. When Ford Motor Company announced construction of a bomber plant at Willow Run, Michigan, German analysts noted it in their reports. The facility would occupy 3.5 million square feet under a single roof, with an assembly line running 1 full mile. Ford's production chief, Charles Sorensen, made what seemed like an insane promise. His line would complete 1 B-24 Liberator bomber every hour. Other American plants were struggling to produce 1 bomber per day. German experts calculated that even if Ford succeeded in building the facility, the complexity of aircraft manufacturing would defeat mass production techniques. They were partially right at first. The first B-24 rolled off Willow Run's line in September 1942 and immediately required a complete rebuild. Quality control failures ran at roughly 50%. In February 1943, Willow Run produced just 56 bombers for the entire month. Critics began calling the facility Will It Run instead of Willow Run. German intelligence officers read these reports with satisfaction. American boasts about mass-producing aircraft were proving hollow, just as they had predicted. But what German analysts failed to understand was that American engineers treated failure as data, not defeat. They decomposed the B-24's roughly 488,193 parts into modular subassemblies. They introduced hydraulic riveting tools, prefabricated wiring harnesses, and continuously moving lines adapted for aircraft tolerances. In 1943 alone, they absorbed 578 design changes while simultaneously improving production. The production curve began to bend. September 1943, 148 bombers produced. December 1943, 365 bombers. Then came April 1944. Willow Run produced 428 B-24 Liberators in a single month. One bomber rolling off the line every 63 minutes, around the clock. Sorensen's impossible promise had become reality, and German intelligence could no longer dismiss the reports as propaganda. While Willow Run was hitting these stunning production milestones, German Fighter Command in Berlin was reading intelligence reports that revealed a far broader catastrophe. American aircraft production wasn't limited to one factory or one aircraft type. In June 1943, Germany had produced approximately 800 fighters total, every factory running at capacity. America produced 2,200 fighters that same month. But the numbers were even worse than they appeared. Of those 2,200 American fighters, roughly 900 were aircraft that had been written off as total combat losses but were repaired and returned to service in under 3 weeks. Germany had no repair infrastructure at that scale. A damaged fighter that made it back to base might wait months for parts that would never arrive. American damaged fighters were being rebuilt faster than Germany could produce new ones. The contrast revealed fundamentally different approaches to warfare. German doctrine: build the best aircraft, train the best pilots, fight until death or glory. American doctrine looked different entirely. Build adequate aircraft in overwhelming numbers. Train adequate pilots in overwhelming numbers. Create a system where neither aircraft nor pilots had to be the best, because you could always send more. The side that could replace losses faster won the war of attrition, and America was replacing losses at rates Germany couldn't comprehend. Luftwaffe General Adolf Galland, inspector of fighters, compiled devastating statistics for High Command review. Germany was losing approximately 1,200 fighters per month. In combat, Germany was producing roughly 1,000 fighters per month. The mathematics were inescapable. Every month, the Luftwaffe was getting smaller. Meanwhile, America was producing 2,500 fighters monthly, while losing perhaps 400 in combat. Every month, American fighter strength was growing by 2,100 aircraft. This wasn't a battle. It was arithmetic. And the numbers said Germany had already lost. The full scope of American production became undeniable in 1944. That year, American factories produced 96,270 military aircraft total. The breakdown was staggering. Over 16,000 heavy four-engine bombers, more than 35,000 fighters, over 22,000 multi-engine aircraft. That single year's production exceeded Germany's entire wartime output from 1939 through 1945. American factories in 12 months had built more aircraft than Germany built in 6 years of total war mobilization. But quantity alone didn't tell the complete story. American bombers bristled with 1350 caliber machine guns in powered turrets, carried advanced Norden bomb sights, and featured modern navigation equipment. By contrast, German fighters in late 1944 were increasingly launched with partial ammunition loads because Germany couldn't produce enough bullets. Many lacked reliable radios, a crippling handicap in coordinated air combat. German pilots were flying technically sophisticated aircraft that had no ammunition and couldn't communicate with each other, while American pilots flew slightly less sophisticated aircraft with unlimited ammunition and perfect radio coordination. German pilots began reporting experiences that High Command initially refused to believe. Luftwaffe veterans described looking up and seeing American bomber formations that stretched from horizon to horizon, hundreds of B-17s, each with fighter escort, more aircraft in one sky than Germany produced in a month. One captured German pilot's diary, recovered after the war, described the hopelessness. "We shot down 10 bombers today. Tomorrow, there will be 20 more to replace them. We lost 3 fighters. There are no replacements. The diary continued, "The Americans don't need to be better pilots. They just need to keep coming, and they always keep coming." This psychological impact compounded the material reality. German pilots knew that every mission might be their last because there were no reserve pilots waiting to replace them. American pilots knew that if they were shot down, another pilot would take their place within days. The training pipeline disparity was equally devastating. German pilot training programs were producing perhaps 100 new fighter pilots per month, and these pilots had roughly 200 hours of flight time due to fuel shortages. America was training thousands of pilots monthly. Their initial training was less intensive, but the sheer numbers meant American losses could be replaced immediately. By early 1945, the final statistics were becoming clear to German commanders, even if they couldn't share them publicly. The United States had produced roughly 295,959 military aircraft. During the war, Germany had produced approximately 94,677 aircraft total. Not twice as many, not 3 times as many, more than 3 times Germany's total production. Göring's May 1940 dismissal of Roosevelt's 50,000 aircraft per year target now looked prophetic in the worst possible way. America hadn't just met that target. At peak production in 1944, American factories were approaching 100,000 aircraft annually. The mockery had come full circle. What Göring called impossible propaganda had been exceeded by actual production. In October 1946, shortly before his scheduled execution at Nuremberg, Hermann Göring spoke with American interrogators. Asked about the air war, he made an admission that would have been unthinkable in 1940. "We were beaten by people who built better and faster than we did," Göring said. "I believed our aircraft were superior. I was right. I believed our pilots were better trained. I was right. But I failed to understand that in industrial warfare, none of that matters if the enemy can build 10 aircraft for every one of yours." The lesson that emerged from the numbers was strategic, not tactical. Göring had believed in racial mythology about American weakness and industrial incompetence. He had dismissed intelligence reports that contradicted his ideology. The war measured both mythology and reality. It found mythology worthless. Democratic free labor outproduced authoritarian slave labor because free workers owned their craft and believed their effort mattered. Democratic industrial systems outperformed command economies because democracies could correct mistakes as they moved forward. The contrast wasn't just between factories. It was between ideas of human capability and organization. On Willow Run's assembly line, a housewife trained as a riveter worked beside a teenager assembling engines and an immigrant fitting wing spars to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. Their combined effort answered a regime that had dismissed them as inferior. The final lesson endures across time. Never underestimate the productive capacity of free people. Göring's laughter at 50,000 aircraft was answered by nearly 100,000. His confidence that democracies couldn't fight was buried beneath 300,000 American aircraft. Misreading democracies because they prefer peace over war is a strategic error of the first magnitude. Free people who choose prosperity over conquest will, when pushed, turn that prosperity into overwhelming power. And sometimes, the greatest victories come not from superior tactics or better training, but from superior industrial capacity and the free citizens who make it possible.